The world of Middle-earth is older than most can fathom. The very fabric of this world is woven from stories of creation and destruction, beauty and darkness, heroism and betrayal. For all its beauty, Middle-earth is constantly being tested, an eternal battleground between light and dark. And among the most formidable of these battles, one stands out above all: the fall of the first Dark Lord Melkor. Once Melkor was the greatest and most powerful of the Valar beings who helped shape the world. But his power was never enough. His ambition, his desire for dominion over all, gnawed at his very core. The world, created by the Valar to be beautiful and in harmony, could not withstand his insatiable hunger. Slowly, as Melkor's heart darkened, so too did the world he sought to control. His betrayal would not just fracture the unity of the world, it would leave scars that lasted across ages. The tale we are about to unfold takes place in the heart of the First Age, when the balance of power tipped and Melkor's treachery began. His corruption, one that began with small seeds of envy and anger, would ultimately lead him to become the Dark Lord, the enemy of all that is good. But even Melkor could not destroy the world alone. He sought allies, twisted minds, and shaped hearts. He sought power, and he would not rest until all of Middle-earth was bound under his rule. The winds of change were stirring, and as Middle-earth stood on the precipice of ruin, one question loomed. Could Melkor's corruption be stopped, or would it engulf all life in shadow? The First Age, a time of creation and wonder, was marked by the arrival of the Valar and their shaping of Middle-earth. In the beginning, Melkor was part of this harmony, a spirit of immense power and influence revered by all, but his heart was restless. The very act of creation, of shaping the world, filled him with discontent. Melkor sought to bring forth order, not the order that was designed by the Valar, but a darker, more absolute order, one where he ruled and all life bowed to him. He resented the beauty of Middle-earth, for it did not reflect his image of perfect control. He could not accept the harmony of creation. He desired to break it, to twist it to his own desires. Thus, his rebellion began. From the moment he turned his gaze away from the light of the Valar, from the moment he sowed dissonance among the Aenir, the seeds of his downfall were planted. His pride and anger led him down a dark path. First, he sought to manipulate the lesser spirits, the Maiar, enticing them with promises of power. Then he turned his eyes towards Middle-earth itself, seeing in its lush beauty a world ripe for corruption. The betrayal, however, was not an instant affair. It was gradual. Melkor's lust for control, his hunger to dominate, grew with each passing year. He slowly began to twist his power and seek darker ways to influence the world. For the first time, his ambition overshadowed his desire for creation, and his heart was consumed by a single thought: to rule. The Valar at first did not see the true nature of Melkor's heart. They saw his strength, his brilliance, and they believed he was merely seeking more control within the framework they had already established. Yet they failed to realize that Melkor was no longer content to work within the structure. He sought to tear it down and rebuild it in his image. His betrayal was a quiet one, a deception built over years of manipulation, subtle influences, and the gradual erosion of trust. Gandalf, decades later, would begin to piece together these ancient truths. Through ancient texts and conversations with Elrond and Galadriel, he uncovered the seeds of corruption that had shaped Melkor's fall. But even in his investigations, Gandalf could not fully grasp the extent of Melkor's evil, the depth of his destruction. It wasn't just the land that was shaped by Melkor's touch, it was the hearts and minds of the people who lived there. As Gandalf reflects on Melkor's betrayal, he begins to understand the true nature of the darkness that has plagued Middle-earth for centuries. Melkor's ambitions were not confined to a single battle, a single moment in time. They spanned millennia, and in every age his touch was felt. Gandalf's journey of discovery leads him deep into the ruins of Numenor, where he uncovers the first signs of Melkor's influence on the Free Peoples. The Númenóreans, once the greatest of all human kingdoms, had been gifted wisdom by the Valar. They were meant to be the guardians of Middle-earth, yet Melkor's corruption twisted their hearts. They desired immortality, power, just as Melkor had, and just as he had sought to manipulate them. Through their use of the Palantir, the seeing stones gifted by the elves, the Númenóreans saw glimpses of the future, of their power, of their wealth, but also of their deepest desires. The Palantir, intended for wisdom, became a tool for manipulation, showing only the darkest paths and feeding their greed. As Gandalf uncovers these long-buried secrets, he realizes that Melkor's first great betrayal was not only against the Valar, it was against the very future of Middle-earth. The Palantir, once symbols of wisdom, had become instruments of domination, just as Melkor had intended. The fall of Numenor was not just a tragedy, it was Melkor's long-term plan, carried out through subtle manipulation. The kings of Numenor had seen the power of the Palantir, but they had not understood its true nature. Gandalf begins to see that Melkor's influence, though fractured and distant, was the root of the corruption that had spread throughout Middle-earth. It was a sickness that had festered for ages, and Gandalf now realizes that it may be beyond healing. The stakes are higher than Gandalf ever realized. What began as a search for knowledge has now become a race against time. The Fellowship's mission is not just to confront Sauron, it is to prevent Melkor's lingering influence from rising once again. The shadow of the first Dark Lord still hangs over Middle-earth, and Gandalf must find a way to undo the damage that was done so long ago. But can it be undone, or has the world already been shaped too deeply by Melkor's betrayal? Only time will tell. The deeper Gandalf's investigation into the dark past of Melkor leads him, the more unsettling the truths become. As he pores over ancient texts, sifting through the scraps of history that remain from the First Age, one chilling fact rises to the surface. Melkor's power to break the world was never solely reliant on his own brute strength. His true gift, the one that allowed him to manipulate and twist Middle-earth to his will, lay in his ability to influence others. This, Gandalf realizes, was the core of Melkor's malevolence. He was not just a destroyer, but a corrupter, a master of bending the hearts and wills of those who could have opposed him. Melkor's first betrayal, as Gandalf uncovers, was not an isolated incident, but the beginning of a long campaign to subtly infiltrate and corrupt the minds of the greatest powers of Middle-earth. His first victims were the Maiar, the lesser spirits created by the Valar to aid in the shaping of the world. These beings were meant to be helpers in the vision of the Valar, assisting in the development of Middle-earth's beauty and harmony. But Melkor, driven by his insatiable desire for control, turned these noble spirits into his most dangerous servants. Sauron, once a servant of Alle, was one of these corrupted Maiar, drawn into Melkor's web by promises of power and domination. Gandalf feels the weight of this realization. Sauron was not just an agent of evil who appeared out of nowhere. He was shaped, molded by the very darkness Melkor had set in motion long ago. And as the shadow of Sauron began to stretch across Middle-earth, the damage Melkor had done in the First Age lingered like a stain upon the world. But it was not just Sauron who was affected by Melkor's malice. The Númenóreans, the great island kingdom of men, had been chosen by the Valar to be guardians of Middle-earth, to protect and nurture it in the coming ages. They were given the gift of the Palantir, seeing stones meant to guide them with wisdom and foresight. But these stones, meant to serve as instruments of wisdom, would become tools of manipulation. Melkor had already set his sight on Númenor long before the stones were gifted to the kingdom, knowing that the desire for immortality and power would be the perfect bait to lure the Númenóreans into his grasp. As Gandalf continues his investigation, he realizes that Melkor's corruption of the Númenórean kings was not just a passing affair. The Palantir, instead of being used to guide the wise, were twisted to show the Númenóreans only the darkest paths, paths that led to their downfall. Melkor's whispering presence was felt in the very stones, his influence seeping into the hearts of the kings and pushing them toward greed, fear, and the pursuit of power. He had set the stage for Númenor's fall, an event that would echo throughout the ages. The more Gandalf uncovers, the more he sees the long game Melkor played. His manipulation was subtle, nearly imperceptible at first. But as the seeds of corruption took root, they began to grow, twisting the very foundation of Middle-earth's future. Gandalf understands now that Melkor's betrayal wasn't a momentary lapse or a reactionary act. It was a deliberate and calculated design, a plan that would take centuries to fully unfold. And it all began with Melkor's first betrayal. His desire to manipulate and control the minds of those who should have been the guardians of Middle-earth. Gandalf's investigation leads him deeper into the heart of Middle-earth, toward its darkest corners, those places where the shadows of the past still linger. His search for answers takes him to the ruins of Numenor, where the echoes of Melkor's influence still resonate. As he stands among the broken stones of the once great kingdom, Gandalf feels the weight of history pressing down upon him. The Númenóreans, gifted with wisdom and foresight, had fallen victim to the very forces they sought to understand. As Gandalf traces the paths of the Númenórean kings, he sees how their descent into darkness mirrored the patterns set by Melkor in the First Age. The Palantir, once tools of guidance, had become instruments of manipulation. The kings had been shown visions, not of hope, but of their deepest desires, their darkest fears. Through the stones, Melkor's will had been subtly imposed upon them, leading them further down the path of destruction. But it wasn't just the Palantir that had corrupted them. It was Melkor's lingering presence, his whisper in the minds of the rulers, that had pushed them toward their own ruin. As Gandalf digs deeper into the archives of Númenor's history, the full scope of Melkor's betrayal becomes clear. The fall of Númenor was not just an accident of fate, it was the culmination of Melkor's plan, set into motion centuries ago. His corruption of the Númenóreans had been the first true victory of his dark influence, a victory that would reverberate through the ages, influencing the rise of Sauron and the fall of many other kingdoms. But even as Gandalf uncovers this dark history, he feels the pull of a deeper mystery. He knows that the shadow of Melkor still lingers over Middle-earth, that the corruption he seeded has never truly been eradicated. The Palantir, though scattered and lost, still hold a dangerous power. Gandalf begins to understand that his task is not merely to uncover the past, it is to stop the evil that still lingers in the world, the evil that Melkor set in motion. The mystery deepens, and with it, the urgency of Gandalf's mission. The stakes are higher than he realized. The history of Middle-earth is far darker than he had ever known, and the consequences of Melkor's betrayal will not be easily undone. The power of the Palantir remains, and with it, the potential to shape the future of Middle-earth. But will Gandalf and the free peoples of Middle-earth be able to stop the darkness before it consumes them all? The journey takes Gandalf deeper still into the heart of the mystery. His next step will bring him face to face with the most dangerous truth of all, the true power behind the Palantir and the dark legacy of Melkor that still shapes Middle-earth. But the path is fraught with danger, and Gandalf knows that the choices he makes will determine the fate of all. The weight of the revelation sits heavily on the Fellowship as they emerge from the dark depths of Moria. The air is thick with tension, and though they have left the labyrinthine corridors behind, the shadows they carry with them are far darker than any that lingered in those halls. Gandalf, his face drawn with concern, reflects deeply on what he has seen, the true face of evil, the corruption that has wormed its way into the very fabric of Middle-earth. The Palantir, once thought to be symbols of wisdom, now seem to embody the opposite, a reminder of how the forces of darkness, long buried, can still claw their way back into the world. Saruman's treachery and Sauron's rise are not separate events. They are but pieces of a larger, insidious design set into motion by Melkor, the first and greatest of the Valar, whose lust for power still haunts the land like a lingering curse. Gandalf's thoughts turn to his companions, each of them unknowingly carrying the weight of this ancient knowledge, this truth that has followed them from the past, through the ages, and into the present. He watches as Frodo and Aragorn walk in silence, their minds heavy with thoughts of the coming trials. The Fellowship may have thought they were only battling Sauron, but Gandalf knows better now. This war is about more than just the Dark Lord. It is a war against the deep, ancient darkness that has always sought to take root in the hearts of men, elves, dwarves, and all the free peoples of Middle-earth. The truth is, Sauron is but a reflection, a shadow of the true malice that nearly broke the world in the First Age. The Palantir are not gone, Gandalf realizes with growing unease. The stones, once created to guide, are still out there, waiting to be used again. And in the wrong hands, they are nothing more than tools of manipulation, their power far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Gandalf, consumed by these thoughts, feels a deep sense of foreboding settle in his chest. The darkness that once threatened to engulf all of Middle-earth has not vanished, it waits silently in the shadows for the right moment to rise again. Tensions among the fellowship are palpable, but none speak of them. The journey ahead has become far more complicated, far more dangerous than any of them had anticipated. They must continue their mission, but the questions of how and why they fight have taken on a far deeper meaning. Saruman's betrayal was only the beginning. Gandalf knows that now. As the Fellowship presses on, they are caught between two forces, the overwhelming threat of Sauron's armies and the insidious shadow of Melkor's influence which still looms over them. The past, it seems, is never truly gone. It clings to the present like a poisoned memory, and Gandalf knows that the fight they are preparing for will not be won with swords alone. It will be won with the strength to resist the darkness that calls to them, the strength to fight against the same temptations that once corrupted Saruman. The journey continues, but Gandalf's mind is restless. As the Fellowship makes its way through the wilderness, he reflects on the broader implications of the revelations they have uncovered. Melkor's influence is not just a relic of the past, it is a thread that runs through the fabric of Middle-earth's history. His manipulation of the Maiar, his twisting of the minds of the Númenórean kings, his corruption of the Palantir, each of these events set the stage for the tragedies that followed. Gandalf begins to understand how deeply Melkor's shadow has stretched across time. The Palantir were never merely tools of foresight, they were weapons, instruments of control, and they have been used to shape the course of Middle-earth's history. The fall of Númenor, the rise of Sauron, and Saruman's betrayal, all of these were driven in part by Melkor's influence. The free peoples of Middle-earth have been pawns in a game they cannot fully comprehend, manipulated by forces beyond their control. As Gandalf stares out into the wilderness, his concern grows. Sauron may be defeated, but the darkness Melkor unleashed has not been vanquished. The Palantir, though scattered, remain. Their power is dormant but not destroyed, and it is only a matter of time before someone, perhaps even Sauron himself, seeks to claim them once more. The future of Middle-earth is tied to the fate of the Palantir, and the knowledge that they were never just tools of wisdom haunts him. The shadows of the past are never far behind. Gandalf knows that the struggle ahead is not just against Sauron's armies. It is a fight against the very darkness that has lingered, waiting for millennia. As long as the Palantir exist, as long as their influence remains, the war will never truly be over. Gandalf's reflections are sobering. The true battle is not just against an army of dark forces, but against a darker, older enemy that has always been present in the hearts of men, elves, and dwarves alike. The corruption that nearly broke the world in the First Age is still present, a stain on the fabric of Middle-earth that cannot be easily washed away. Gandalf's resolve hardens. There are those who are still standing, who fight against the darkness, but the cost of that fight is steep. And yet, in the face of this ancient evil, there is still hope. As long as the free peoples of Middle-earth stand together, there is still a chance. But only just. The darkness may have been temporarily vanquished, but it is always watching, always waiting. Gandalf knows that. He must guide the Fellowship forward, knowing that their path will lead them into a battle that has already begun.